Hey, you're going to watch a video that will be very lengthy because I'm combining my work on the cycles of the economy, the war cycle, the corporation cycle, and the constitution cycle. Now, if you want to see them separately, you can go to Plato's Cave Revisited. And go to the playlist, and the playlist will show you cycles of economy, war, corporation, constitution. So I'm going to start with the very first video I ever made, and this video is rather special to me because it got me started in making videos. Since the making of this video, I estimate that I probably made maybe 2,500 videos. Now, they're not all online because I removed a few of my channels. I was overwhelming myself and overwhelming you. But I put together my work on war and war cycle as it's related to the economy. And this video is going to contain all of my work. So if all goes well, I will let this play through and the length of the video will be considerable. So you can stop it at any point and then replay it later if you want kind of a massive work on war and how it affects the economy. So I'm going to start this and let it play through, and hopefully you will be blessed in that you will learn a lot about war hoaxing as being central to the economy of the United States, as well as war hoaxing is central to the economies of many nations, many countries. So I'll get started and I'll check in with you at the very end. Hello YouTubers, this is my first attempt to come online, and this video will be very simple. I do not possess the great video creation skills that many of you have. However, I'd like to bring about a few simple points to the internet in YouTube. War spelled backwards is RAW. W-A-R becomes R-A-W. Drop the W, and what do you have? The same sound as Ra, the ancient Egyptian sun god. Now this video could be entitled The 80-Year War Cycle. The 80-Year War Cycle. And so I'm going to show you that every 80 years there is a major war. It's very simple, and it pertains to math, and it pertains to what you might say 2 full generations, taking 40 years as a generation, 2 full generations, and then comes major war. So let's go back in time to the end of the Revolutionary War in 1781. Let's add 80 years, and what do we get? We get 1861 for the Civil War. Now let's add another 80 years, and what do we get? 1941. World War II begins. So let's recap this and come over to this board and look at the recap. 1781, the American Revolutionary War ends. Add 80, and that begins the Civil War, 1861. 1861, add 80, brings you to 1941. World War II begins. Every 80 years. So, what about 1941 plus 80? Brings us to the year 2021, 2021. Could that be the year that another war begins? It's food for thought for you and for me and for anyone interested in realizing that every year war hoaxing, every 80 years war hoaxing is going on. Yes, behind it all is Ra, the sun god, to fool the world in this cycle of 80 years of war. The 80-year cycle of war. Think about it. Is it by accident, or is it on purpose that every 80 years we see major war here in what we call America? Think about this, and I hope it was helpful to you. So this is war backwards is Ra. War backwards is Ra. And that is what is behind all of this. The false god, the one who deceives the world, the one who wants the world to fight, the one who wants to destroy, the one who wants to bring great destruction. Ra, the sun god, acting, yes, every 80 years to bring us war. So long. This is my first video, and I hope it was helpful to you. This is War Backwards is Ra, and I'm going to try to show you how the 80-year war cycle that I've discovered and talked about is related to what now I call the 70-year Khan cycle. So the 80-year war cycle concerns wars and debts of war. The 70-year Khan cycle concerns the Constitution, all right? So to review the 80-year war cycle, we start with the American Revolution. It ends in 1781. Add 80 takes you to 1861. Civil War begins. Add 80, it takes you to 1941. World War II begins. Add 80 and brings you right into the present moment of 2021. The Corona War is in place. Now there could be further developments in this whole idea of a war against a virus. It could lead to an actual bombs and bullets type phony war. Now if you notice, I put a prediction down here, 2001, the next major war will begin on this cycle, the 80-year war cycle. Now this coordinates with and runs parallel to the 70-year cycle I call the Khan cycle. So the first Khan begins in 1793. Okay? Now we add 70 to that, it takes us to 1863. The second Khan begins, we add 70 to that, and that takes us to 1933. And we add 70 to that, it takes us to 2003, where the fourth Khan is now in effect. When will the next con take place, or con number 5? 2073. Follow these cycles. So let's go a little further with this. Now, exactly what is the con cycle? Okay, the con cycle has to deal with none other than the Constitution. All right? So we began with the Articles of Confederation, which was the original agreement of the colonies here in what we call the United States of America, but at the time it was just known as America. Then the first con that was introduced was called the Constitution for the United States of America. For small letter U, small letter T. Now that con began in 1793. Now why 1793? Well, the Constitution is ratified by the last state in 1790. And in 1791, amendments are sent out, so that basically by 1793 you have the complete con. You have the original Constitution plus amendments is now in place. So that's a con, because this con will then take care of all the debt of the so-called American Revolutionary War, huge debt. Now the second con, or Constitution, number 2, is 1863. All right? That's when that one will begin. Because 70 years is all you can go with a con or with a debt imposition on the heads of individuals, okay? So every 70 years you must construct a new con. So the new con this time is called the Constitution of the United States, and I believe there's a capital W and a capital S. So this document is different from this document. Now it's a con. Remember, nobody can really understand this or see this because it goes by you so quickly and your mind just doesn't think this way. But in the, quote, legal realm, or the color of law fiction, the change of any one letter or one word, or how you capitalize or how you put small letters, creates a whole new thing, okay? So this is a completely different con from this con. So now we add 70 to 1863 and brings you down to 1933, all right? And that's where the third con takes place, and that is the Constitution of the United States. Now notice, America is missing in the third con. Now the one that I believe we're in now is what I call the fourth con, which would be the United States Constitution. It appears they're in all capitals. All right? So when is the next one? Well, if this cycle is true, and it certainly seems to be, it's the year 2073. That's the next expected con. So let's take a look at this a little further about the meaning of a constitution. Okay, now a constitution is really not at all about giving you, quote, rights. Now that's the modern perception, and we're under perception management, or hoax system, or lie system, or occult, power of demon system, whatever you want to say, all right? However you want to call it. We are being conned because it is a bankruptcy compact. It's of contract, and it is a contract of debt. In other words, who is going to be responsible for the payment of these huge debts? Now, what are the huge debts? Those are the wars, all right? That is the purpose of the war. The purpose of the war is nothing to do at all with ideology, nothing at all to do with freedoms, nothing at all to do with liberating people. That's all hoax and nonsense. The purpose of this is to create a whole bunch of junk at a high cost, and then take the debt of that junk and the debt of the ones that run the junk and put them on the heads of the people. Now, who are the people? They are the straw men and straw women. Okay, now forget about the fact you are body, soul, and spirit. I understand that. I'm with you. You are body, soul, and spirit. You are not a straw man or a straw woman. You are body, soul, and spirit. However, because you live in this world, you can do nothing. Nothing. Unless you have a straw man or straw woman. That's why now you're being hit up with all the time for identification. All the time. Show me you pay bills. All the time. And everything you have, or you think you have, or you own, or you think you own, is in capitalized letters. And that's part of the con too, by the way. Not only is your body and your work under this debt system, actually your possessions are too. Now, that's a whole nother topic, and it may get some people really riled and feathers really ruffled, because nobody likes to be told you've been conned, right? And that's the whole basis of you listening to me. You realize you've been conned, right? And so most people that don't want to hear this, they won't go any further with my videos. They won't go any further with this whole idea you've been conned. And I'll try to talk about that in another video as well. All right, so you are, and I am, whether we like it or not, we are a corpse with an corporation. And that's your capitalized individual, phony individual, fake individual that's on your driver's license, your passport, your documents of ownership, supposed ownership of car, of house, you name it. And if you don't have one of these, right, if you bow out and say, I'm not going to be a straw man or a straw woman, basically speaking, you're not going to have a bank account, you won't be able to maybe even rent a home, you won't be able to purchase a car, nothing, zero. So I'm sorry to tell you, it's pretty much a no-win situation, and there's going to be a lot of folks out there going to say, oh, you can get out of this, you buy your straw man back and all this stuff. Well, you know what? I think they could be part of a hoax too, and that they're going to make money off of you. They tell you how to do this, and all you're going to find out is you're going to have trouble the rest of your life. You'll do nothing but fight a system that's so overwhelming and so powerful that you just, honestly, just remember the scripture I get on this is over and over again, render to Caesar what's Caesar's, and render to God what's God's. So if you're in this phony compact system where a debt is placed on your head that you never incurred, I'm sorry. That's just the way the world is run. And by the world, I mean the fallen system. I mean the system that's owned by the devil. All right? But you can live above and beyond it by saying, this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. Just like that wonderful hymn of the church, this world is not my home. Even though this has been thrown on me, this Constitution, even though the debt of a phony war has been thrown on me, it's not my home. I'm just passing through. So what that means is you need to live your life for Christ. You need to live your life for the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. And if you're looking for rewards, you're going to put them in heaven. Don't bank here on earth. Put your rewards in heaven. And neither rust, nor moth, nor thieves can get at it, okay? So say no to the hoax lie system. Say yes to God's system, and just try to find peace of mind in knowing that all this stuff is not really what you're about, but you have to live with it. And I'm sorry, I don't go along with these folks that tell you, oh, you can buy your way out, or you can buy your straw man or whatever. No, I think that's just another hoax to make money on you, because it's a system you're not going to win. And if you think you're going to win, you're going to have so much stress. I honestly think it could cause major sickness in your life, or perhaps even death, because of the stress of fighting all these individuals. Remember, they're everywhere, okay? They're in every town, they're in every city, they're in every state, they're in every country, all right? It's worldwide. It's the devil's system. So you just have to throw up your hands and say, I belong to God, and I trust Him. And none of this is really my life. So I have to render my dues unto Caesar, but don't forget the second half. Render unto God what belongs to God. And I'm going to tell you something. Your body, your soul, and your spirit belong to God. All right? Now, this world wants the straw man. This world wants the straw woman, right? But God wants your body, soul, and spirit. So submit to Him, and you'll find peace, because you're just a passing through, and this world is not your home. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate your viewership. The three gears of the economy of the United States. Now, if you can imagine that the United States of America has three gears in it, similar to the idea of an old wind-up watch that had gears in it, similar to any machine that operates on gears. So there are three gears, okay? The gear of the corporation, the gear of the war cycle, and the gear of the Constitution. So you will see it in front of you, and I put in the center the war cycle. Now that was my first video that I ever made, called the 80-year war cycle. And the original first video that I made is on War Backwards is Raw. And if you go to that channel, just go to the very first video, the oldest video. When I made the video, I basically had almost no attention on the video. It's very simple. But as time went on, it began to pick up. And the truth of that video is even more apparent right now in the year 2021. So at the center of the economy is the war cycle. Now I've identified it as an 80-year war cycle, and that's the heart of it. And I know there are other wars that don't fit into the 80-year war cycle, and I'll try my best to try to associate those other wars in this complex gear mechanism of the economy. So if we begin in the year 1781, that's when Americans, or the colonists, were hoaxed with the fake American Revolutionary War. And it will end in 1781, but the peace treaty will not be signed until a few years later, but we're going to use the year 1781. So the next war will occur in 1861. 1781 plus 80 is 1861. Fake Civil War. All right, let's go another 80 years. 1861, 80 years plus. 1941, fake World War II. Let's go another 80 years. brings us to the present moment. This video is being produced in November of 2021. And we are in the midst of another war. A different type of war. And when I made videos on the 80-year war cycle, I had a prediction that the year 2021 would see a major war. But the type of war that's being waged is not like the wars of the past, whereby the wars in the past, people put on uniforms. In a way, they do right now. They put on uniforms. And they used guns to shoot bullets. Shots were fired. Even right now, shots are fired. Okay? So in the year 2021, the 80-year war cycle came true. Now, why do they conduct fake wars? Well, there are lots of reasons, but of course, primarily, those who are in on the fake wars make fortunes. Fortunes are made by waging war. But as far as we are concerned, that is the public or the common people, the wars create debt. Huge debt. Debt beyond your comprehension. Debt beyond anything I can ever fathom in my thinking. So, in a way, the fake wars are like the body, with the deeds, the action. Okay? So at the center I have the fake wars. That's kind of your central gear with the 3 gears. Now, in order to function effectively, there needs to be a body. And that's where I look to the corporation. And the definition of a corporation is a corpse with an oration. Something that's actually dead, not living, but it has an oration, it has a mouth. That's kind of the literal definition of a corporation. Okay, so prior 1871 is the big year for the start of America becoming a corpse with an oration. That is when America will go from basically being a colony or a subsidiary of England. Okay. All the stuff about George Washington and breaking free of England was phony. The United States, otherwise known as America, has always been under the control of England. And even as I speak, it still is under the control of England. Think about it. Why would King George let go of a vast amount of real estate? Some think the word real estate is kind of a corruption of royal estate. So America would be his royal estate. Now, so after 1871, America is no longer a colony. It's a corpse with an oration. Now, people ask me on this 80-year war cycle thing, how do the other wars tie in? And I have to admit, I don't have all the answers. But if you take the 80-year war cycle, and then you take the 80-year corporation cycle, and you take 1871 and add 80, you get 1951. Well, guess what America was doing in 1951? Korea. That's right. So the United States is and functions as a corporation. So that's another gear in the three-gear system. So back to the main focal point of the board. Again, you have your three gears. The center gear is the fake wars. And then the gear on my left as I speak would be the corporation, or the body with the oration. So that brings us to the third gear, which is the Constitution. Okay, now when America supposedly got free, it was covered under what was called the Articles of Confederation. And then the hoax liars, Masons, came up with a Constitution. And that was pushed and passed. And so in a way that took away from the independence of the particular states in the United States, the sovereignty of the states, now coming under one body, sort of forming that one body. And remember, the New World Order people are all about oneness. They want one body. They want one religion. And they want one government. So one world economy, one world religion, one world government. So the Constitution, as it occurred in 1793, now I call that con number 1, because what they will do in the formulation of these constitutions, they will change the title slightly. And if you change one letter, it's an entirely different constitution. So the first con, it is the Constitution for the United States of America. Now remember, the Constitution is a mouthpiece, okay? You might say that's the mouth of the body, of the corpse with the oration, all right? So that will speak for the corporation. And that's why in America, the two most important positions are President of the Corporation, Secretary of the Corporation. All right, so con number 2 comes in 1863. It's the Constitution of the United States of America. Now remember, this is a 70-year cycle. So you got to go from 1863 to 1933. And remember, if you've watched some of my other videos, 1933 is very important because on March the 9th, 1933, that would be the 3rd month, and the 3rd 3, or the 9th of the 3rd month of 33, everything collapses. And anything and everything that you ever thought you knew about a valid government is gone. Gone, gone, gone. Because you've been conned. All right, now, this Constitution, con number 3, I believe the subtlety is it's of United States, not of America. So the previous constitutions were of America. So they switched it. So anytime anybody talks about the Constitution of the United States, don't pay too much attention. Don't hold the Constitution like the Bible or some sacred religious book. It's not. It's a con. I know there are so many people out there that they're truthers and they love videos like what I make or others make, and they want to uphold the Constitution. But it's just a con, and it's another aspect of the entire system of fooling people. So again, in the year 2003, you have the Constitution appearing in all caps. So again, back to the idea of the variation of even one letter that creates an entire new document. One letter. Even just capitalizing one letter. Even missing a little thing like of or for, substituting of for creates an entire new document. So if what I'm saying is true, then the next con coming is 2073. Now why is the Constitution so important? Because the Constitution is the mouth. And the mouth will speak and say, the debt goes upon all the corpses, with orations. Now, do you know who that is? That's the man or the woman on your driver's license in capital letters. That's the man or woman on your deed to your home that you think you own, which you really don't. That's the man or woman on the certificate of title for your car, and you think that it now belongs to you. No, it belongs to your corpse with the oration. And all corpses with orations are responsible for what? Guess what? The center gear. Okay? The fake wars and the debts that they create. So try to take it back to the overall picture of everything. And the overall picture of everything is this. There's 3 gears in the economy. The central gear that I identify is the fake wars. Okay, that would be at the center. Now they create debt. And where does that debt go? Well, it goes what the mouthpiece says, or the Constitution. Okay? Now how do they get away with just, bebopping around and creating all these fake wars? Because it's a corporation. It's a body. The United States is a body. It's not really what you think it is. And incidentally, that explains why all wars after World War II are what they call undeclared wars. In other words, the Constitution, the way the government was set up was that the Congress had to, quote, declare war for there to be an actual war. And what happened was that, basically speaking, in 1933, you got the whole United States was just completely demolished. And so what you have now is just a phony government, and that's all it is. Congress, Senate, with actors, and that's basically what most of them are. Some of them are famous people with disguises. Some of them are people that are just wealthy and like to go out and dress up and pretend like it's Halloween, and they play the role of a senator, congressman, congresswoman, because there's no need for a government, because all government was abolished in 1933. And you know, you've got these folks that yell and scream about, oh, they're going to declare martial law. Well, listen, I want to tell you something. Martial law has been in effect since 1933. That's why you can see them do anything they want and bypass anything in the fake government. Because it's military rule. It's been military rule since 1933. Now, I know that flies over the head of many, many people, because they want to believe in, guess what? The Constitution. But the Constitution was a con. Just as everything that's done in the hoax-lie system is a con. So where does this leave you? Where does this leave me? Well, it leaves us in a system where we basically feel pretty helpless, but not hopeless. What do I mean by that? Well, as a believer in the Lord Jesus, I don't belong in this world. Now, I live in this world. I drive a car in this world. I go to the grocery store in this world and buy groceries. And my corpse with oration pays taxes. My corpse with oration gets stopped by the state trooper for speeding, or for not pulling into the passing lane when he's sitting on the right-hand side of the road with his flashing lights on and there's no one around. Yes, that happened to me. That happened to my corpse with the oration. So yes, I mean, I'm not trying to sound idiotic to you. I live in this world, but I'm not of it. And I'm of the kingdom of God, which means this entire turf is the turf of the devil. But I don't live under the power of the devil. I live under the power and the rule of the Lord Jesus. So I hope that's a little word of hope after presenting all this to you. Now, I know what it can do to many folks is they will shut down. They won't want this type of information because it can overwhelm you. But as Jesus said, be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. So I don't care how much this fake, phony world throws at me. I don't care how much is thrown at me. I don't belong to it. I belong to a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And I don't want you to be shaken by this information or by any of the falsehoods of the hoax liars who try to control us. because the day will come when this world will be gone and the eternal kingdom of Jesus the Christ will be established forever. So once again, my friend, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I would like to say I tried my best to present something to you, and it could have some flaws in it, it could have some errors in it, I admit. But what I want you to see is the big picture of the three gears in the economy of the United States. Now, if you're from another country and you're listening to this video, you might be able to do exactly as I have done for your country, for your nation. And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with history of other nations and everything like that. I just struggle enough to try to piece this together here in the United States or in America. But if you're from another country, try to look for basically the same things that I have shown you here. Fake wars, a corporation that rules your country, and then some mouthpiece or some constitution that puts the debt on the people and inhabitants of the nation where you live. Thank you for watching this video. End of video. In this video, I hope to give a partial explanation for why some wars do not fit perfectly into the 80-year war cycle. So if you're familiar with my thesis about the 80-year war cycle, you'll see it in front of you. 1781, fake American Revolutionary War ends. Add 80. 1861, hoax Civil War begins. Add 80. 1941, hoax World War II begins. Add 80. And it brings you into the present moment of another war of a different nature, one like people have not been familiar with, okay? So that's one gear in the three-gear system. The other gear is the Constitution, and the other gear is corporation. So why is it that some of the wars do not fit perfectly into the 80-year war cycle? To answer that question, I have to take you to the population. Now, as years go on, the population is increasing. Okay, so you see in 1900, 76 million. The year 2000, 282 million. The increase of the number of individuals inhabiting the land requires that more wars occur. Now, why is that? Because the debt needs to increase. Now, it sounds terrible to say that, because we, the inhabitants of the land, we strive and want to live for as little debt as possible. But the controllers wish to make the debt as great as possible on all inhabitants of the land. So as the population increases, the need for more wars increases. So I'm going to propose that what happens is that other war cycles develop. Now I'm going to affirm that the 80-year war cycle is still in effect. In fact, if you follow the 80-year war cycle from 1781 up to the present moment, you'll see it's absolutely perfectly on target with our current situation of a war against an invisible enemy and incurring an incredible debt. Perhaps the debt will be even far greater than as if the war was with bombs and bullets and uniforms. The uniforms are a little different and the type of ammunition or shots is a little different in the year 2021. But going back to this concept, the concept of other war cycles existing side by side with the 80-year war cycle. So one that I've identified is a 50-year war cycle. So if you take the year 1941, World War II, add 50, that takes you to 1991, First Gulf War. Now we'll go down and we'll look at Korea. Take you down. Okay, sorry about that. Not the best camera crew here. These movies are not funded with any funds. There's no monetization on any channel that I have. I've never ever wanted to produce any videos to quote make any money. My reward is to just present some truth to you and for allow you to absorb it and to maybe apply it and then maybe to build on it in some way. So the second example of this 50-year war cycle is the Korean War ending. Well, actually it never ended, so it's not proper to talk about it ending, but it might be best to use kind of a designated ending of a standstill of 1953. So rather than 1951, if we put 1953 Korea, add 50, that takes us to 2003. And guess what happens in 2003? The Second Gulf War. So there may be other war cycles occurring, maybe a 40-year war cycle, a 30-year war cycle. I haven't done the math. I haven't looked at everything. I'm only trying to answer a question, what about other wars? And how do the other wars fit into the war cycle, the 80-year war cycle? Now keep in mind that all of this is about creating debt so that the debt that's created by the false wars will go onto the heads of the corpses with orations. That would be your name in capital letters. So you can see in my little chart there with the yellow that you have the phony wars, one wheel or one gear. You have the constitutions, another wheel or gear, and the corporation, the big corporation, which is US of A, but the little corporations that are under the big corporation, and that would be your name in capital letters on all your documents, okay? Because that creates the corpse with the oration, capitalization of your name. So back to the overall picture. You have three wheels or three cycles. You have the war cycle in the middle, and you have the corporation cycle over there on the left, and then you have the constitution cycle over here on the right. And keep in mind that a constitution is just a contract. And that's what pins the debt on the heads of those corpses with orations. In other words, your name in capital letters. And then the different cons that have been conducted. Hopefully I've identified correctly 4 every 70 years. And they do this by changing something in the title. So, for example, going from the first con to the second con, it was Constitution for the United States of America. The second con was the Constitution of the United States of America. Okay, so there's the con cycle, the war cycle, and then of course the corporation cycle. And as population increased, more and more inhabitants of the land, the greater the need for more debt. The greater the need for more debt, the more wars that are faked. And hence you have the same 3 mechanisms at work. I'd like to thank you for watching this video and a video. Okay, I'm going to try to present to you what I think is happening, and I'm going to use what's called the Hegelian dialectic, and that is the creation of a thesis, an antithesis, and waiting for the outcome, which is the synthesis. So let's begin in the upper left corner with the thesis. Notice I use the word create, and in parentheses I use manufacture. So that's the terminology that came out of the early 1900s, and those who understood the great power of the media. At that time it simply would have been film, and then eventually it would have been radio, but you also had your newspapers and magazines, okay? So those who are in control can create a crisis. Now notice I have in there, it is a media event. As one book mentioned, it's a media atrocity. It's a media crisis. It's completely media. But in your mind you accept it as reality. So that brings me to the word below it. Real. It's real time. R-E-E-L. Not R-E-A-L. And I hope to do a video on that, so stay tuned to this channel. Alright, so we're going to go up over to the other corner, and we're going to look at the antithesis, which would be the reaction. Let the public respond, but help the response. In other words, create more videos and more articles on the newspaper and more things in magazines. It's everywhere about how deadly this virus is and the things you can do to, quote, protect yourself, and on and on and on it goes. Oh, we just happened to have somebody with a cell phone that captured this video of these people fighting over toilet paper. Here's a camera in the store that catches a woman buying $100 worth of toilet paper. Not really. Basically, you're seeing actors who are presenting to you responses that are once again manufactured or created to help allow you to do the same, to help allow you to panic about toilet paper, to help create in you maybe a fight or an argument with somebody at the store about meat on the shelf or whatever. So they are also controlling the reaction. They are controlling the antithesis. They are helping the public, leading them along to a false response to a false crisis. Now, where does that leave you? Well, once those two things kind of crash with one another, and it's a lot like two poles, the poles of positive, negative, or yin and yang, or it's the dualism of mystery religion, it's the two pillars in Masonic literature and practices and secret rituals. Okay, so you take these two poles, you take a thesis and an antithesis, and allow the two of them to interact and allow people to react and to respond. So what does that bring you? That brings you a synthesis, or that brings you an outcome. Now, the outcome, as what we're seeing, is total fear, panic, people isolating themselves, paranoia about anything and everything. But that's not really the actual desired outcome. You're starting to see it right now in the news, the false news, the fake news, all the phony news, which everything is infiltrated and everything is infected with falsehood. Magazines, newspapers, radio stations, television stations, you name it. Whatever you think is safe for news, you're wrong. You're wrong. Okay, so everything is giving you the synthesis. What is the synthesis? Well, we need a Savior. We need a deliverer. We need a Moses. We need some of the judges, like in the Old Testament book of Judges. Who can deliver us from this craziness? Well, guess what? You know who the Savior is? Well, of course, it's only the government. The government now is gone into war mode. Why? Because the government wants to put a huge debt onto straw men and straw women. Now, what do I mean by straw men and straw women? You have one. Get your driver's license out, look at it, your name is in all capital letters. Anything and everything with certificates and license and so forth is capital letters. That is a corporation. It is a corpse with an oration. That's right, you have a shadow that follows you throughout life, birth, life, and even death. And let me tell you, the shadow still continues even at death. That you became a corporation, whether you liked it or not. Now, I certainly didn't like it, and I certainly didn't even know about it until a few years ago. But anyhow, the corpse with the orations, that's the definition of corporation. And your driver's license, that thing on your driver's license is not you. That's a corpse with an oration. And that is the one who's vulnerable in the hoax system, all right? So, well, what happens is when the government starts handing out money like candy on Halloween, and the government starts supplying all these wonderful things like rain suits and masks and research on a phony virus, then that creates huge debt. Now, that leads me to my next possible thesis here that I'm going to present to you, that it might actually be that we are seeing the fulfillment of the 80-year war cycle. So what do you mean? Well, if you get my video and take a look at it, I present the thesis and the idea that all of history so far has been under an 80-year war cycle in the United States. Now, granted, there are other wars that don't fit into it, and I've got some ideas on that, and I'm working on it. That's the number one comment people make. Yes, I'm onto it, and I'm working on it, but I can only handle one war cycle at a time, all right? Let's just stay with this one. Stay with me. It's 80 years the war hoaxing occurs. So you have the end of the American Revolution hoax 1781. It ends. Treaty of Paris is not till 1783, but we're going to use the actual end of the hoax. Add 80, what do we get? 1861. And that brings us to the Civil War hoax, all right? It's real simple. That takes us to the Civil War hoax, 1861. All right, let's get rid of that hoax. And let's add 80 to 1861. That brings us to 2021, which I was saying in my video, which I made about, 2 years ago, I believe, that we're due for something. And I even have another video that actually says about 2021, possible Third World War. And that still is a possibility that this might be just a minor hoax, in the sense leading to a bigger hoax, maybe a war with, quote, China, our enemies, even though like 90% of what you buy in the stores that you attend might be coming from China. But who knows, we might end up in a hoax war with China over this, because the virus started in China, supposedly. It's all nonsense. But anyhow, 2021, a war, and this is sort of a new concept for folks in their minds, but it's really not a new thing at all. There's not just simply war that involves bombs and bullets and machine guns and grenades and all that stuff. There's other kinds of wars, and this could be one of those other kind of war, namely a war on a virus. So this is just a proposal that possibly the 80-year war cycle is actually unfolding right before us, and the war is possibly a war on a virus. We're seeing manufacturing plants now manufacturing a whole bunch of junk. And that's what happens in war, by the way, even the wars with the bullets and the bombs and all that. Yeah, some of it's used for target practice. Some of it's distributed and people waste it for crazy reasons. But for the most part, it all ends up somewhere like a junkyard. It all ends up in disposal mode. That's why you had your war surplus stores that were still around when I grew up. They were selling World War II junk in war surplus stores, because there was so much of it manufactured. They had to get rid of it somehow, and some people bought it up and made a living out of it. But basically, most of it just ends up somewhere in a junkyard or buried in big heaps somewhere. And that would make for another good video, by the way, but we'll just stay with this one. The 80-year war cycle. Possibly it is the virus hoax. So let's go back and take one more look at it real quickly. And that is, we're going to look at the fact that we've been confronted with a thesis, a phony virus, which is just simply the common cold, an antithesis, which is the Republic panicking, and then a synthesis, which is simply government expenditure to help comfort and fight the fears and panic of people, and then the huge debt is created, and then that takes us over once again to the idea of the 80-year war cycle, that basically the 80-year war cycle is an economic cycle, and it's a cycle of spending huge amounts and then taking the debt that you spent, all the money you spent on all this junk, and then putting it on the heads of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Who knows, I might have been living my life to pay off the debt of World War II. And I think maybe my mother and her folks were paying off the debt of World War I and Spanish-American war hoax and all that stuff. But anyhow, these debts are thrown on your head, my head, but not really. It's thrown on the heads of the corpse with the oration, or the little corporations that nobody, hardly anybody, is thinking about. Yes, that would be the one that follows you through your whole life, Yes, that's the one that's been following me my whole life. And this is a summary presented to you by War Backwards is Raw. Thank you for watching. End of video.
Or like a tease.
Thank you for watching. End of my video.